Although I think the genre is often quite Marmite for a lot of people, I really enjoy narration-based games where its choices matter, story-rich, and not so much gameplay going on where you've actually got gameplay mechanics, but you might be able to move around environments, interact with people, but the story is being driven by the choices in your dialogue or some of the actions that you take as a result of dialogue. So, perfect example of this would be the Walking Dead series or any Telltale game that's come out in the last 15 years. And Best Month Ever absolutely follows that trend. You play as two characters and you'll be able to move them around environments, but as far as gameplay, you might pick up an object occasionally or take part in a rare quick-time event. Everything else in this game takes place in dialogue choices that take place in conversations. Best Month Ever, though, is a really heavy story, and so there's an awful lot of trigger warnings, I would say, up front around this type of game. You play as Louise and Mitch in the 1960s America. Louise is a single mum, Mitch is her son, Louise is white, Mitch is black. One of the first big triggers in this game will be around racism. It is confrontational. It is very of its time when racism was allowed to be front and centre and quite blatant and almost accepted in daily life. And this goes back to that era and it doesn't hold its punches. It also shows that Louise comes from a gaslit, broken family, and you'll deal with a lot of that too. So you will be dealing with sexual assault, you'll be dealing with sexual assault of minors, you'll be dealing with family gaslighting. You'll also deal with dodgy work deals and having to do things for money. And you'll also have to deal with the fact that Louise is dying. And so the whole story on this Best Month Ever is that she's got a month left to live. And what she's trying to do is find where she should put her son Mitch to be able to grow into an adult. As you go through 12 chapters in this game, which will eventually lead to your passing, what you're doing is trying to shape Mitch into the man that he will become in the future. And he has 3 different personality traits that consistently change, or constantly change rather, depending on the dialogue option choices that you take. So, if you want to be more people-pleasering or maybe more chatty to people as you get to know them, as opposed to trying to go in straight for the jugular of what you need and want, then you'll raise his ability to be able to converse and be more sociable with people. You can choose to be a law-abiding citizen, or you can choose to not have those morals and go and break the law, rob, steal, set things on fire, blow things up, shoot and kill people. Go down that route and you'll decide whether or not Mitch is going to be a law-abiding citizen or if he's going to develop some issues and problems later in life. And then in the third and final one is around his confidence and inner power. And this is whether or not you're going to stand your ground or whether or not you're going to take a more passive route through some of the conversations, therefore sometimes meaning that you don't have to stick out like a sore thumb and take on your own battles. But in doing so, that means that you then anger people. And quite often a lot of your choices will have positives for one and negatives for another. These all lead through to 9 different endings for Mitch, and these all basically appear as epilogues. When you play through the game, and it takes about 3 and a bit hours to get through a run-through of Best Month Ever, the game itself largely sticks the same, even though your choices may be different. The dialogue will change slightly, but you'll still go through those same 12 examples as you go through the game. But your epilogue for Mitch will be entirely different depending on those choices and where those stats end up, basically. And so you can play very differently on each playthrough and have a very different Mitch at the end of the game. And that's really the biggest draw, and one of the best takeaways that I can give to Best Month Ever is that it does feel like your cumulative choices matter. Even if it doesn't matter in the story, the epilogue that you get, they are all different, and that's good to see. Where the game falls down for me is around the fact that it's trying to do so much with so many meaty and weighty topics, but it doesn't give them, I'm going to say, room to breathe. And what I mean by that is that the tone of this game flies absolutely all over the place, and it's really lopsided. So you'll be going from like dealing with reconvening with your family, for example, and they've gaslit you over the fact that you accused someone of sexually assaulting you as a child and they didn't believe you, and so you left the family. So when you come back, you deal with all of that, but then you spend more time dealing with going and getting people for dinner, or playing with Mitch with the kids and stuff like that. And you spend more time doing the mundane stuff than having the meaty and juicy conversations where things matter. But then at the same time, you'll have weird comedic moments. And like later on in the game, there's a point where you shoot and kill someone potentially. And then you spend just as much time talking about where you're going to go next on your field trip. And then it reflects back to that being such a tense night ever. And then the next conversation is about it being the best month of your life. And that all happening within about 2.5 minutes gives you so much cognitive dissonance that it's difficult to keep up with and really feel like you're on a journey that's cohesive. Graphically, this game is interesting. I think the art style doesn't do it much favours, but it does mean that you get to have some nice set pieces on occasion. Some of the lighting effects, I think, work quite nicely, but it has that kind of greyed out oil painting mosaic style that means that detail is lost, sadly, and that means that some environments really suffer, particularly in dark areas. The soundtrack of the game, I think, is really well done. It's heavily jazz influenced because you're in jazzy America at the time, and Mitch's father was a trumpeter. I'm trying to think of the right word then. And so Mitch has learnt to play the trumpet kind of as a result of that. So that's a theme that runs throughout the game. And what I would say around the voice acting is that the main cast work well. Some of the extra actors that are around it are a bit wooden and don't quite land nearly as well, but particularly Louise and Mitch, I think, land relatively well most of the time. And it's good to have voice acting in what is definitely an indie game. However, what I would say is just go in knowing that this is going to be a harrowing but confusing experience because of the sheer speed of where it's trying to pull things in together, and it's got the speed of what should be slice of life and what should be a really tense and awkward situation the wrong way round for me personally. I shouldn't spend more time playing hide and seek with children than dealing with a Ku Klux Klan argument or robbing a gas station, for example. It's the wrong way around, and so it feels like you spend too much time in the mundane and not enough time in the juicy. Written review will be over on higherplayinggames.com at the end of this week. If you've got any comments or questions, leave them down below and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Cheers. Higher Plane Games is part of the Higher Plane Network, a completely independent media outlet supported by people like you. The goal is to create the best possible content that cultivates a richer indie scene for games as well as music and entertainment. To find out more and to get involved, visit patreon.com/higherplane network. Your support makes all the difference, and in return you'll gain access to bonus content and downloads. Thank you for watching.